Okay, all good. All good. All right, so our first item is the consent agenda. So you have the advocacy committee meeting summary, which is a nice summary that's in a block form that had some highlights as well as actions and motions and decisions or items to discuss. Do I have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Do
I'll
we have a
second.
second?
Oh,
Thank you. All right. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Well, those. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, good morning, Lee.
Good
Good to see
morning.
you.
But I do have to, if it runs over an hour and a half, I've got to pick my daughter up at the airport, so I'll be off at 10:30.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Our next item is the membership establishment, and this is a big deal that we really need your input on and feedback. And so attached is the draft advocacy committee charter that I hope people had an opportunity to look at. If you didn't, we can certainly go through it here. It's not too long. It's about 2.25 pages, 2 1/3 pages. But for our committee, each committee as part of the CoC has their own guidelines or charter. And part of the discussion in this with some notes on the side was, do we use the same language and call it a governance charter or a charter? And you'll see some of those comments on the side of the document. So I have my copy that I have marked up a little bit. If I could ask, do people want like a minute or two to kind of skim through this to refresh, or if you didn't, have time to open it up and kind of look at it, or do you want to start? We can start discussing, and don't feel bad if you've got to skim through it and review. It's fine.
I'll be
I
honest,
just looked
I
at
need
this
a
a month
minute to
ago.
look.
It's been a month ago. Okay, why don't we
No.
give it?
I mean, I lived this a month ago and have looked at it since and
Oh.
still need a quick refresh. But so I was just
Yeah.
piggybacking with confirming what you were saying.
Okay. Why
No
don't we take like a minute here or so, minute or two, and kind of skim through this first page here section. Yep. And because there are a couple of discussion points, especially, here. Yeah. Okay, are we good to kind of start? I hope so. Okay, let's let's take it just paragraph by paragraph. So I think our first paragraph should be fine. Does anyone have any comments about that first paragraph? All good? Okay. The second paragraph, one of the things I noted was just to make sure that we're all clear as a committee, I hope we can go out and invite more people to participate in the advocacy committee. But you have to be a member of the CoC. And remember, if somebody has financial hardship, we have scholarships to be a member. And, some general membership dues aren't that much for just ordinary people that aren't part of some, great big organization. But you do have to be a CoC member to be part of any committee in the CoC. And then the other, and please just jump in. I can't see everybody, so if you want to jump in, just jump in verbally, because that'll make it easier for me. So you have to be a member of the CoC or an employee of an organization that's part of the CoC. And then the committees are the action planning components of the system in these bodies. So in part of our committee, strategies are developed, deepened, and expanded into timed work plans. And we might not do, all the work of a timed work plan. I don't know if we really want that there, or if we want to be, simply advisory. We could always put a timeline in, like, we want to bring this to a board of directors meeting or an executive committee meeting on this, in this month or this date, and then our goal is to have a discussion at a certain other date. But as far as us doing big deliverables, I don't know that that's our role as an advocacy committee. So if people would like to comment on that.
I would, Kathleen.
Yeah, go ahead, Lee.
I guess I'm not a very patient person. My family will tell you that. And I feel like if we can get the responsibility and authority to do stuff without going back up the chain, and then back down. I mean, we meet every 3 months. I mean, if we want to be a little more nimble, I believe that if the CoC exec and the CoC board would give us some authority to do things without having to ask, I guess, for permission after the fact, but get permission before. This is what our plan is. This is our plan of action. In broad terms, go do it. And then we should have the authority to do it. I've sat on church committees where I got frustrated, where we plan all this stuff up and it goes up the chain and it comes back down and it's a no. It's like, So my opinion.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think, as a resident, a citizen of Pinellas, you can act, at any time without any permission from the CoC. One thing, I think you raise a great point, and I too have been told I'm an impatient person. It was on like my 5th grade report card, I think. She's a great student, but she's impatient. But let me give you an example of where this was real life. So maybe it was 2 summers ago, the Sunrunner had free bus transportation down to the beach. And St. Pete, it was promo. It was, for a set amount of time, but they were actually considering it, I think, extending it and all that. And the residents, especially in St. Pete Beach, were just all up in arms. And they were saying that the homeless were coming down there and they were taking showers at the beach. And, anyway, they didn't want just everyone having a free ride, and especially the homeless down into their community. And so at the time, we had the CEO of the HLA, our lead agency, draft a response. And, there was a PSTA meeting that was packed about people that didn't want this to go on. And she stood up and made this statement, and that went through the executive committee and all that, because it had to be kind of, delicately worded, that we understand your concerns, however, and we were in favor of keeping the promotional free rides down to the beach. And that really, it was the tone of that conversation, of the outrage out from the community, was, I don't want them from St. Pete, those people coming down to my beach community. And so it wasn't like, I'd like to take care of those people and figure out how we can serve those people better. What services did they need? It wasn't that. It was like, I just don't want to see them. I don't care what you do with them, but I don't want them bust down to my community. And, and so we made statements. Our CEO at that time made statements about, we need to deal with the reality of people who are struggling financially and blah, blah, blah. But, you have to be, if you're using the name of the HLA or the CoC, you just want to be sensitive to all those kinds of things. And I think that's why we would want, if you're going to use our organization, it needs to have some kind of vetting. That's just my thoughts.
And I'd like to add as well, something that's newer is that now the CoC, the board and executive committee are able to vote electronically, or at least in the governance charter that's been updated. And so that has created a situation where we can get much quicker response and run things through, within 24 hours, we need to hear from you, that sort of thing. So that I think has helped out a lot. But because I agree, Lee, it can be a very long process, and especially when we're looking at right now, July, the congressional delegation coming down, and there are things that need to happen between now and then. That like now need to get planned, and so it's helpful to have that option. The other thing that I was going to say is just this sentence about strategies are developed, deepened, and expanded into timed work plans. I guess I'm reading it a little bit different. I don't know. So I believe that committees do work, but you have staff available. There's staff support, and so that timed work plan, depending, work could be going out and following up with a representative, or creating some sort of product, but also it gives the HLA a good idea too. And of course, we are able to make our own work plans based on what we hear and the feedback we get. But I just want to throw that out there, that it doesn't put all of the work on volunteers to manage. It's with support.
But I think, I don't know if y'all received an email where I had 2 articles and an advocacy letter, one on an Atlanta CoC that's doing good work, and then an article on Las Vegas and a study in Las Vegas. It was a little more dry, that Las Vegas article, but it would be where we could read what's going on, share articles and information that's going on nationally about what CoCs and other communities are doing, and then bring forth suggestions to our CoC as well. Where, we've got strategies or exploring options to solve particular concerns. So if anyone wants to comment on, that part about our committees, and then we can get into the specifics of our objectives for the advocacy. But any further comments on those things?
One other comment. How do people get appointed to the committee? Because you have to have a quorum, so that means you have a committee member list. I didn't see anywhere here the process of actually appointing or approving committee members, unless I missed it.
We have anyone can join the committee. It says the membership of the CoC Advocacy Committee shall include Pinellas CoC members in good standing. And then just our membership list will be submitted to the CoC board on an annual basis, which is just like, this is who we are. But I don't have anything in our proposed charter here that
It seemed
says
like
there's an
someone has to
application.
approve, I mean, it's maybe a formal approval, but
Yeah,
otherwise you don't know what quorum you're trying to reach.
right, right.
Right. I'm wondering if if there are five voting members, if we scroll down a little bit.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I don't, no, that's a point that may need to be clarified
Mhm.
because it says at least one.
Well, I
Right,
just remember attending some of the other committee meetings and you guys we couldn't do anything because there wasn't a quorum.
Mhm.
right. And Sherry, that language is will strive to have at least, not
Strive to have at least
required.
one.
Will
Right.
strive. But yeah, we don't say about an application or and I wouldn't, I don't, should we call it an application? Because I can't imagine we're denying, the only application we deny is if they weren't a member of the CoC, I think, right?
Well, maybe
And
a referral or maybe I don't know.
I disagree. I think if you are a member in good standing of the CoC, so you're a dues paying member or your dues are waived for whatever reason, and you want to participate as a member of the advocacy committee, that should be sufficient.
Agreed, but we have to have ways to remove them if they don't show up for meetings. Otherwise, we'll never get quorums. If you miss three meetings in a row, you're gone. Otherwise, you have run into, unless you want to get rid of the quorum requirement, which I'm fine with getting rid of the quorum requirement. That might be easier.
I do see the tension there. Yeah. I'll add all good points. I don't land on one to really recommend here, but what I will say is that there is some other committees. What happens is that somebody says I want to be a voting member, and the chair can ask for a motion to approve. Everyone approves, and then it goes on. But that's based on having some sort of quorum established. And the quorum would be then that that member has been approved so that if that member does not continue coming, that member is always welcome to attend the committee meetings, but they're not going to be counted towards quorum if they've been put off the roll.
Um,
We can move on, Kathleen. That's just paperwork.
no, I think that's a good point. I do think, everyone, well, yeah, and I think we need to formalize somebody who's a member that they've, indicated with a commitment that they're going to be a member of this committee, not just, you know, uh, because we need to submit our membership list to the board of directors on an annual basis. Um, and the decision making is a vote of the majority of members present. So a majority or 51% of the committee constitutes a quorum for all committee meetings. So no business will be conducted unless a quorum is present. Yeah. Yeah, I I'm I think we could take away that decision making, you need to have a quorum, because there's nothing worse than being here for a meeting and you don't have quorum and the people that showed up and changed their schedule, uh, you know, can't get work done. Um, but yeah, I think a formal statement of membership is fine. And we could have on there with, maybe this is where we want to think about having, uh, if you miss three consecutive meetings or three meetings in a year, whatever it is, your membership may be at risk or something, or you may be asked to step away from the committee or something.
How many meetings do we have per year? Is it 6?
I
4.
think it's 4.
It's 4.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. And we could use the word may be asked to step away from the meeting or something. I mean, if somebody has health issues or things happen,
Yeah.
but they've got to have some kind of ownership and responsibility. Um,
I don't know that there's a requirement that, so this is, it's been mentioned in board meetings and other meetings where if there was an issue with quorum, that the 51% or the 50 plus 1 is, it could be, why is it not 25%? Like it can be
yes, yeah,
open, but that is
yeah.
I would recommend that section, as far as like whether or not there be a quorum
Mhm.
component, that may be a Murray question.
Okay.
Just to look at the governance charter, make sure that it's all aligned and.
Okay. Got it. And Murray's our attorney that's working with the CoC and looking over our MOU and charter, making sure things are all aligned. So I'll flag that for him and ask him that question. Sure.
And if you are interested, I mean, I know Megan's wondering if just on record,
Mhm.
if you wanted to open it up to whoever's interested in being a member,
Yeah.
and that you and Anne Marie could definitely open that up, have a vote, and to approve, and then we can just have that on record as well. I don't know if that's necessary right now, but it is an option.
Okay. Like right now to open it up that anyone who is a member of the CoC can be a member of the advocacy committee.
Mhm.
That's what I
First president
understand.
expresses interest.
Yeah, that's what I understand we have
Mhm.
anyway, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. Megan, are you there to speak? Because
Yes.
I think that you have a really good point.
So right now, we don't have a formal membership of this committee except for Chair Beckman, and Vice Chair Anne Marie Winter. So everyone else here presently is not technically a formal member. So we need something official to formalize a membership list, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah. So rather than call it a membership application, we could call it, committee agreement to serve on the committee or something. And, you fill in your name, the date you started the committee, check the box, you understand that the meetings are quarterly, you understand that you're expected to attend all meetings. And if you miss 3 consecutive meetings, you may be asked to step away from uh, the advocacy committee. And then we could have under there a couple things that, decision making is blah, blah, blah. So it's just, a short little 1-page thing that people understand what they're getting into and what the purpose of the committee is. So as we get into these objectives and stuff, that somebody will know that your expectations are like we just talked about, Lee, which, we didn't really agree on, that there is a chain of command for if you're going to do advocacy under the CoC name, we do need to have executive committee approval or something like that. And I know it's you might be impatient, but I mean, I can hear my executive committee members and I agree with them that if you're going to write a letter to the editor or make a statement at a county commission meeting as a member of the CoC executive or advocacy committee, I think we need to be respectful and give the executive committee a heads up on what's being said.
I
But
completely
again,
agree. I
that's
mean,
my opinion.
I
Yeah,
completely agree. I mean, this committee makes recommendations, right, to the board to then
right.
approve. for action to occur. The
Right.
advocacy committee does not operate independent of that structure.
Right.
So I completely agree with that. And there may be times where, there isn't a board meeting for another 2 months, but certainly the executive committee can be convened or informed to get that approved.
Very
So I think,
quickly.
yeah,
Yep.
I think that definitely needs to be included, because we don't want anybody being rogue.
Right.
Or
That's right.
jeopardizing the credibility of CoC or HLA to actually move forward whatever initiative they're trying to work on.
Yeah. I think we need to hold on that. Yeah. Gary, you had your hand up. I did see that.
Yeah, as well as make sure that people understand the conflict of interest when we're doing things like this. But yeah, absolutely. We don't want someone going out there in the name of the HLA or the CoC acting on their own accord. As a metaphor, being a Native American, I can tell you, what good would the tribe be with a bunch of people running around acting like the chief? We have structure for that. So we need, you know, we need, that's why we have a command structure. I've already run into a couple instances in the time me being involved in the CoC where people have overstepped and made potentially damaging statements, putting themselves out there as CoC authority, and we can't have that, in my opinion. And what is wrong with having it approved through the command? I mean, if anyone has been in the military, you have a commanding officer. Were you in the military, Mr. Allen? No. Well, you would not do anything without your commanding officer. So, after all, CoC, another metaphor would be chain of command.
I guess I want to rebut a little bit here. I'm not trying. My goal was not to have rogue, not to go do things that we didn't have the authority to do. That's what my first statement was. If the CoC gave us the authority to go lobby, go talk to Pinellas Park, Largo, Seminole, I don't think every time we gonna go meet with Seminole City Council, we're gonna need approval. That's where I was going. Not on never responding immediately to a public, crisis, but more of a plan of action.
Yeah.
Politics is a tricky thing. It's all about language. So you have to be careful of how you say what you say and how you approach that conversation. It's all about the language.
Yeah.
And granted, there are times I am language handicapped. I admit myself. I own my flaws, but you have to be careful with that, especially when you're dealing with legislatures and government officials. A lot of time you have to be very careful about how you say it. There's probably 15 different ways to say everything.
Thank you. I think that's a good point. And Lee, I appreciate that too. But again, as we prepare to meet with legislators or, go to a commission or council meeting of any of our municipalities in the area, we're working on preparing kind of a one-pager to leave with those elected officials, decision makers, and that needs to be vetted, through the executive committee as well. And so we're working on that. But yeah, it really needs to be kind of tight that way. But again, people can do things as citizens with whatever experience and background you have, independent of the CoC and the advocacy committee at any time. Yeah.
I'm not hearing too much conflict here, and so it just may be how I'm interpreting, but what I'm hearing is Lee saying, can we get the pre-approval so we vet this
Yes, we can.
points,
Yes.
and then we are free to, with that already been approved. Yeah, we don't have to get approval with every single meeting we're going to have if we're using the exact same thing. Gary, with the leak pamphlets, you don't have to get approval to hand those out to the pamphlet's approved. So you are allowed to hand that over. It's ready. So that's what And I do think it's made a big difference being able to have electronic voting occur now.
Mhm.
We can get
Mhm.
input very quickly instead of waiting 2 months for a
Mhm.
meeting.
I agree. I agree. I think that's a good development. Okay, if we can move on to if there are no more hands or comments, and please shout in if you need to. My view again is kind of a side by side, but so if we move down to the purpose, so we've got the CoC Advocacy Committee uses data and research to advocate to policymakers and funders to further the legislative work or legislative and funding goals of the Pinellas CoC. The first bullet under objective says identify and share data anomalies or concerns with the CoC Board of Directors, Executive Committee, and Council and Committee officers as appropriate. And so my thoughts about that first bullet is that's our data system and performance, because how would we be aware of data anomalies? And so would the DSP committee share those with us? Should we have a liaison that sits in on DSP committee meetings, data systems and performance, to be aware of any of those anomalies or concerns? How is that going to be brought to our attention?
I would say two things. And one is everyone's always welcome at DSP. It's a great committee and to dive deeper into data.
Mhm.
But the other thing is, and to understand how we collect the data and some of the, the definitions and constraints. But the other thing is that we have that tracking document that makes where committees can make recommendations to other committees. So we've had DSP
Mhm.
make recommendations to Providers Council or to
Mhm.
Funders Council as well, and to make use of that. And so that's something
Okay.
that Megan helps put together at the end of a meeting.
Mhm.
Any follow-up actions for other committees. So those are recommendations to be made. But I definitely hear you about maybe
Okay.
not identifying and sharing, but receiving that data, um,
Mhm.
keeping a
Okay,
pulse
so
on it.
we would wait for that tracking document to come from DSP. So if DSP doesn't send out a, hey, heads up, people, we're seeing this, then we can assume that there are not anomalies or big concerns, other than we have too many people on wait lists, but anomalies, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's I wouldn't leave it just to the DSP, but DSP can definitely would if there was an anomaly within HMIS, then yes, that discussion would come up. It would
Okay.
be helpful though. Also, we do have some members who, uh, well, Gary's on DSP
Mhm.
as well, and so if he hears something, then he can be the bee that pollinates over here, right? Uh, that's another way. But
Okay.
there are data that are shared in most meetings in some format, and it could be quantitative or qualitative, and so just keeping that in mind. We're not
And it
entirely
can even
silent.
be, yeah, even be, newspaper articles and reports that come out, Alice report, things like that, right?
Exactly.
That this is what we're learning. Okay.
Right. And DSP that wouldn't be looking at that as closely.
No. Okay. All right. And then any other, the second bullet, again, please jump in, anybody. The second bullet, encourage CoC councils and committees to discuss possible causes and solutions to address targeted gaps and issues related to ending homelessness in Pinellas County. And I know at our previous meetings, Anne Marie had brought up a great point about using the gap analysis and our findings of PIT to target where advocacy needs to happen, where we have those gaps that we need to do better on. And we are working on that gap analysis, and we've got a timeline for the gap analysis that comes out. And Sherry, if you want to jump in, you're welcome to. But I have that timeline of a July 11th. The HLA is presenting the CoC strategic plan to the CoC board along with a gap analysis that we'll be able to
Except
reference.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. The executive committee, the last one, there was a little bit of a change to that.
Oh, that's right, into the fall. That's right.
Yeah.
You've told me that 3 times.
But
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay. I just want just for record. But definitely, we have the PIT report,
That's right.
and we do have housing inventory count data. That's the gap analysis, and so that will be available for review. It will
And
then
that'll be
do
coming
another
out
gap
more.
analysis though.
That's right.
Yeah,
So,
more
the
thorough.
PIT report will be, yep, earlier, that we'll be able to reference, and it does have recommendations that the advocacy committee will be able to pick up, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay,
Always includes recommendations in it.
okay. I didn't have any other comments, except for the 1, 2, 3, 4, our 5th, bullet that says collaborate with the HLA to create call to action materials for stakeholders that can be shared with constituents and across wide networks. And we are doing that right now. I attached on an email that was sent to you a sample letter from the Florida Coalition to End Homelessness on advocacy for our COCs here. And we're working on a plan to meet with federal legislators this summer about protecting funding for COCs. And we don't have the state budget yet to know where we stand with that. And those legislators, I think they've been home for Memorial Day weekend, but they're still up in Tallahassee working on that budget. So we're doing that now. I also have a list of all of the 24 municipalities in Pinellas County and their council or commission meetings through the end of this year. And one of my thoughts is, and this just goes into our objectives, and we can talk about it a little later, but being educational and informative with those local cities, municipalities in Pinellas, to let them introduce the CoC to them and what we do and why we need their support. So that's kind of the call to action materials.
I have a comment about that.
Sure, Jennifer.
I've been since I've been a part of the CoC, I've been really big about putting the membership flyers out and talking to businesses and seeing where I can put the information. And I have an idea, and it would, it would consider take the solicitor's permit and which actually and actually take the membership flyers and some of the other information. They've had a little tiny flyer where it had who's homeless, and it's got the little QR codes, and decide on what information and kind of put them in bags and go around to neighborhoods and hang them on people's doors. And that permit only costs $10. And
How long does that permit last? Is it for a week or?
No, it's for a year.
Really? A year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I had the solicitors. I did the one where I could actually go in and talk to people and also give them information. And that one's $50. But to go and take the information and just hang it on their door with the, because we have to get, that's what we talk about in the LEAP committee meetings, is we have to get, the information out to the community. And Pinellas County being such a big county, it's important to, there's so many people that don't know about the CoC.
The resources. Yeah.
And do have that shared vision that we do to help in homelessness.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea. And I would be willing to pay the $10 on my own, and if that was something that could be you know,
I
approved.
think, yeah, I think that's a good, I think we could, maybe I could find out more information. So a couple of questions that I would bring to the leak committee meeting, because there's the cost of printing and materials to put it together. So who's going to do that? And then I'm sure your soliciting permit is per municipality. So if it's that much for Clearwater, how much might it be for Tarpon or Pinellas Park? Is that correct? Right? It's for a different.
Yeah, because I was in Clearwater at the time and my address was Clearwater. So I
Yeah,
had to go to the Clearwater Police Department to
yeah.
get it done.
And then the other thing is maybe we want to start smaller, especially because of maybe cost of materials, but to do businesses that we think um, like laundromats, that people would frequent, libraries, and leave some things there to start rather than a residence. But it's just a thought. But
I do
yeah, I
do
think,
that. So,
yeah,
like, there's a laundromat in Clearwater that I've put information and even the Largo Library. So I kind of have
yeah.
a, so
I know
yeah,
you have a plan. You've done a lot of good things with all those flyers we ran off. Yeah. Sherry, before I'll get right to you, Gary, but do you think this is more of a discussion for our the leak committee first, or how do you want to, what do you
Yeah,
think we
I think we can hear more and then do some more support research into it to find out how to move forward from that. So thank you, Jennifer.
should? Okay.
I figure the
Gary,
more numbers, like the more funding there would be if, if they get the word or, find another avenue to, um, talk about the COC and, whether it's TV, radio, a newspaper or something,
yeah,
but just like advocate and get that information out there.
yeah. I know there's that little radio station in Clearwater, the TAN network, the Kelly show does all things Clearwater, and Pinellas, but um, it's a once a week show, and she could certainly have uh, people from the lived experience and or advisory committee or advocacy committee on there. But yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
And what
And I will
station?
mention that advocacy opportunities are on the next the June's leak committee's agenda.
Okay. Good.
What's that again?
Advocacy opportunities are on the leak committee agenda
Okay, for the
for
next meeting.
June. Hmm.
Okay, perfect.
And I think even, Spanish speaking radio would be good too for, and I don't know how they, if they do free nonprofit little promos or something, but we could look into that. I'll look into that before the June leak meeting about free promos or free, that's redundant, but, yeah, on radio.
And what was that? What was that station you were talking about in Clearwater?
It's called Tan Radio, TANTAN. It's right on Myrtle. It's like on the corner of Myrtle and close to Myrtle and Palmetto on the west side of Myrtle.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there a station like is it on AM, FM?
It's Google up Kelly show.
Kelly. Okay.
Kelly. Yep. Her name is Kelly and she married a man with a last name Kelly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Have I heard of Hillsborough Recovery Coalition? No. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So we're all okay with the objectives. How are we doing? Oh, Gary, did you still have your hand up? I can't see you. Nope.
Yeah, Jennifer, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but me going to Panera Bread, they have a nonprofit community bulletin board Perhaps you should maybe think about posting some of the membership flyers in those. Merely show it to the manager, get their permission, and you can put it up there. You probably find a decent bunch of clientele in Panera.
Good.
Just an
Right.
idea.
Thank you. Kay, thank you. I see your hand.
Okay.
And that was it.
Hi, we're with Golden Generations, and I know that the Hillsborough Recovery Coalition, they meet like every third Monday or something like that, but it's just, partners from, I guess within the field or lived experience. They have that meeting and they have different topics of discussion. So that could be an avenue as well.
Distribution of resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, and just networking and seeing, who's, what's going on and and the different places, different counties. So
And approaches, sure.
yes.
Thank you. Good.
Mhm.
Good. Thank you for that. Golden Generations. Okay. All right. Okay. Under objectives, we moving on? Or are we good? All right. Think we're good? Okay.
Kathleen, I just
So
want to
the-
mention it's just keeping track of time that it's 9:45
Yeah.
and
Oh.
so we can complete this if the group wants and you choose to. In the agenda, it states
Yeah.
that a full review of the charter. There's going to be another opportunity at a future meeting as too. So
Okay.
it depends on where you want to focus time.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping me on track. I think that was kind of the most intricate, I think, discussions on those, the purpose and the objectives. And I think, yeah, we're good. Moving on, we'll strive to have those broad representation. Whether or not we can get a representative from a funder or provider might be a little tough. Those guys are really stretched up here at the blue part up there. And then we'll revisit this. And again, I will ask Murray, our attorney, to give it a look over, especially on that decision making and the quorum question. Does anybody have anything else pressing on this document before we move on, knowing that we will revisit it?
I just want to
And
thank you.
knowing that, yeah.
Yeah,
And we have big open arms for anybody to join. I mean, nobody's going to say no to a committee, member that wants to participate and have a seat at the table. But yeah, sorry, Sherry.
I just want to thank you, Kathleen and Megan and Sherry, for working on this. It's not easy. People love to provide input. I'm glad that it's, as collaborative as it is. So thank you so much, because I think this is a really important committee, and getting this right is helpful. So thank you.
Good. Thanks, Anne Marie. I appreciate your wisdom. All right. So we have Sherry. We'll move on to agenda item 4, that advocacy committee letter. Go ahead.
Okay, so this was back in March, and it feels let's look at that very quickly. It was an advocacy letter that came from this committee, was approved by the CoC board, and then went out to our local delegation. And the response, it was requesting maintaining DCF recurring challenge grant funding. So that's funding that we get close to. It doesn't quite hit $1 million. It's but pretty significant increase in the last year and a half. And the way that DCF works, it does come in increments during time. So you may have we don't have a contract yet for next year, but it may be $150,000, and then we get a $500,000 drop, with 3 months to spend. That's the way that works. So it's fun getting that out there. But we want to maintain that because we have been building the infrastructure to get that out there. And of course, the DCF staffing grant. So a continuum of care is not a nonprofit. The continuum of care is a coalition, right? It's a structured coalition that exists. We have the CoC board and the executive committee that provide that leadership. And then we have the general membership as well. But it is staffed by the Homeless Leadership Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization that, of course, I represent. And In order to staff, we have to be able to pay salaries. And so the DCF staffing grant pays those salaries, and at least a portion of them. And so this committee and the board approved, and the Florida Coalition to End Homelessness all gathered together. That's a coalition of all the COCs to recommend and advocate for continuing that funding as well. It appears that this was well received. Both the Senate and the House for the state are aligned on maintaining the challenge grant funding levels and the DCF staffing grant levels. They're just not aligned on other parts of the budget and taxes, and so that's why we don't have a budget right now. The concern is that, of course, June 30th, we would have had a budget by now. If it's looking like it's going to get closer and closer to the last minute, and the fiscal year for the state begins July 1st. And so any contracts that are not in place, that means that we're kind of walking on hope and a dream and a prayer that we will be paid for any work performed. So while you're paying out paychecks and planning for those, and we are planning for contingencies, but while you're paying out, the uncertainty of knowing if you're going to be paid back, okay, for work performed. So this appears to be successful in that we have allies on the state side and who are supportive of all this, and that it was included in both budgets. So that's not really part of the reconciliation process right now, we don't believe. So that's what I had to share about that. March 17th feels like 10 years ago at this point. We also have the next letter, which I don't know. It's actually in the minutes as a draft, the Dear Colleague letter. And it's a letter that Kathleen was, or the email that Kathleen was referencing earlier in our meeting. Yeah, I don't think that there's a link in it. Megan, it's the attachment to Kathleen's
email from the Florida Coalition to End Homelessness. Yep.
And so everyone would have access to that. If you're looking at the packet, your agenda packet right now, it'd be in the minutes as a draft. The FCEH, which is Florida Coalition and Homelessness, Leanne, we all work together to provide input as COC peers. We meet every other week. And then there's weekly legislative advocacy sessions as well, sometimes twice a week. And so she did a really good job pulling together the case for the COC, why a COC exists, and something that I think is important. So I hope you read that letter, that this is basically going to be the basis of our talking points, and we'll add some more local information as well. We're putting together a toolkit, the staff putting together a toolkit for advocacy, working with Kathleen, of course, very closely on that as well. So that, and then we'll have it vetted, but thank you. Looking at continuums of care as local coordination and local decision making. Right now, politically, that's important, right? We hear that it needs to go back. The mantra is go back to the states, but that's not necessarily local, and that still includes a lot of bureaucracy. So maintaining local, that's what we need to keep saying, local. Small businesses, we need to keep saying that as well. Providers and the HLA, all of our partners that are at least business-like are small businesses. We're not corporations, we're not huge. And so small business is a big one. We're trying to get, and we have been working with veteran services, veterans groups presented there so that we can build a larger coalition. We already have allies across the board, but making sure we get out of our own bubble to see that everyone's affected by housing instability, not just the homeless advocates. So looking for those people who have maybe, are adjacent to us and may have more ins or expand our umbrella. And so that would be veterans groups, aging, the seniors groups as well. We have Anne Marie, and that is awesome that we have that partnership because that's another group that is very well heard and received by the feds and other legislators. As well as business. And so reaching out to like chambers of commerce and making sure that we have We find those allies who are willing to meet with their representatives or sign on to an op-ed letter or with support or write their own or any, on and on with these points.
And one
This
thing
shows that we're effective.
Yep. And y'all have the copy of this letter, and so this has data and it has citations. So if somebody says, where'd you get that number? Really? Is it that high? You've got the citation on this document. And what's important is I think, certainly we all have a heart and compassion, but these have hard numbers about money that's saved when we enact these programs, saves the taxpayer money and reduces, the number of people experiencing homelessness. And I had a call this morning with a member of the Tampa Bay Beach Chamber of Commerce, which is all those businesses along our beaches in Pinellas. And, those are some lower paying jobs in tourism. And, you get concerned about your employees being able to afford housing. And these are people who are fully employed. And so this is really good data that shows our work helps to keep people housed. And so, Lee, if Lee's still on there, but this is all vetted information. So you can use this when you're out talking to people in the community. And it's a great document to convince people to support our CoC and join it and work with it.
Yes, and in fact, Lee was one of the people who, and several others, you as well, Kathleen, who, when we sent this out, when the state, we wanted input that provided good input. And I think it's a beautiful letter. I think it's very well, Gary, when you mention language and in politics and being very sensitive to how we state our positions, the language in this is very intentional. It doesn't say permanent supportive housing, I don't believe. I don't think you'll see that in there. Definitely advocates for it, though. Right now, the federal government it's floating that if they were to move to a block grant system, there's a lot of issues with that. But one of them could be, in lieu of having coordinated continuums of care going on. The state may still support a CoC model. So that's a possibility. But there always comes strings attached to funding. And so what's being floated right now is to turn all the CoC work or all the homeless services work into basically just our crisis homelessness service work. So it would be under emergency solutions grants, which is ESG, which only covers short-term crisis related transitional emergency shelter, that sort of thing, rapid rehousing, and street outreach. It's not permanent supportive housing for people with disabilities who need that support to maintain. And what's also being floated is to cap any assistance at 2 years. And if a person needs longer term supports, which is cheaper than going into a hospital or an ALF or any other institution, people will be institutionalized or on the streets if permanent supportive housing goes away. So that is
which is much more expensive
much
and
more
not
expensive.
what
And we don't even have enough
need.
beds. There aren't enough beds. It is way more expensive. But with our language, the reason why I mentioned this is that the word permanent, if you don't have somebody in your family or you don't know what permanent supportive housing is, if you're outside the CoC and you're like, you hear the word permanent, you're like, oh, we're just going to keep people going forever and they're getting a free ride, right? People in permanent supportive housing, first off, it's not permanent. It tends to be longer term, but it's definitely not permanent. So just saying it's supportive housing. It's longer term supportive housing for people who need that longer term support. But the people who receive that service or are housed in PSH, they contribute. So a portion of their income. Permanent supportive housing, one of the things that we really watch is income increase. That is one of our benchmarks that we track. It's part of our NOFO process. People don't like it too much because it's like, well, that's not our job to, and like, we need that data. We need to see, because we know that if your income is increasing, you have a much higher likelihood of being able to afford the place where you live. So that is So that's something to remember is that it's not just a gimme. People are contributing and they're getting support and it's saving taxpayer money. And it's
It's
effective.
part of educating. It's even like a little thing like Habitat for Humanities. A number of people think those people just are given a home, and it's like, no, they contribute funds. They're paying for that home. It's a zero interest loan, but which is a great deal, but they pay for that home and they have to have a job and qualify.
There
Yeah.
is skin in
So
the
it's
game.
educating, right? Skin in the game. Yeah.
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 So this is a great letter and just to I hope you all read it again. If you did not have a chance to read it in the minutes, read it in its final form that went out in the email with all the COCs that signed on.
And use it when you're talking to people, because it doesn't have to be approved by the executive committee or anyone else, the board of directors. It's vetted and it's out there, so it's good information.
Mhm.
If you wanted to write a letter to the editor as a citizen here, you could use that information. Okay. All right, any questions or anything else there, Sherry?
No, but I will take questions if anyone has any. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we're back on back on track with the time. And I don't see us going to 11, but if we do, that's fine. The legislative funding updates. Again, Sherry went over the budget stuff, so we're waiting for a final budget from the state of Florida. One thing you're all probably aware of is this whole idea that's being floated about eliminating property tax, which is just ridiculous. I don't know where they think we're going to fund schools and police and fire and municipalities and all those services that we've come to need. But anyway, I keep an eye on that. It seems to be just headlines that are
On
out there.
top of that, Kathleen, they wanted to eliminate the sales tax too.
Yeah.
It's also so funny.
We need operational funds to, yeah. Okay. But anyway, keep an eye on that in local news and, reporting and developments. So also we have funding updates on the HUD NOFO notice of funding opportunity that's on our website. So you can go there to learn more. The deadlines are there. I don't have too much more to say for the advocacy committee on that. Sherry, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, the only, as far as the NOFO award, we've shared it with Leak and with the board, and I think everyone's aware of it now. That there was an increase in all of our renewal projects were funded with additional funds as well. And what else about that? These, of course, and we talked about this at the elite committee, but whenever we put out a press release that, the county was awarded funding, or not the county, the CoC was awarded funding, the immediate question is, where's that money going? And because of the nature of this particular NOFO, it really is funding. So permanent supportive housing that I just discussed earlier are programs that are already in place and it's maintaining them or expanding in some cases, but it's not necessarily, it's only for agencies that are nonprofits. It's not for individual awards. It's not like individual assistance. It translates to individual assistance, but people are not eligible to apply for these funds and they're not completely new.
It's
So
just to maintain what we're
it's
doing.
maintain.
People who are, it's just maintain. It's like, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And we can now continue to serve these people who are qualified for services.
Yeah. Our newer projects or our newer funds that come in typically are through like the DCF Challenge Grant. Those are newer.
Which allows more flexibility, which is good.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the engagement of faith-based communities work group opportunity. I've reached out to FAST, Faith and Action Serving Together. I'm having difficulty getting a response and setting that meeting, but I'm continuing to work on it. I think I've told this group before, like last year, because I did it, I think early spring last year, but I have a list of all of the religious nonprofits according to our tax assessor. So I think there are, what did I say, there are like 160 plus religious-based organizations in Pinellas County that we could potentially engage with. FAST is one. There's another Faith in Florida that I can reach out to, but just wanted your feedback on number one. I want to wait for the recommendations from this year's PIT count and it ties into our gap analysis that'll be coming more early fall. But I don't have to wait for a gap analysis to know that the faith-based community is not involved with the CoC. I'm not saying the faith-based community isn't out there doing lots of good work, because I know a number of them are. I know them personally in my neck of the woods. But to have a sense of what they are doing, can we learn from each other? Can we be more in sync, and let's report out what we are doing and celebrate that good work, and hopefully duplicate it and add on with other faith-based organizations or congregations to invite them to help us, make a difference in our community. So I just wanted your thoughts on can you envision that happening? Do you think there's a need? How might it work? Should it be in the center of the county? Should we have like a North County and a South County kind of group that meet more regularly, and then we come together as a full county? I mentioned this, idea. I've mentioned it frequently, but I mentioned it most recently at the St. Vincent de Paul. We had a membership meeting of the CoC, and I mentioned it there at St. Vincent de Paul Soup Kitchen in Clearwater. And there were a number of people in the audience that said, my church would like to do this, or we would like to be involved, or we've been looking for something like that. So I have a feeling that there are congregations that see the state of our world right now, that think they want to do something, and just don't really understand how. And I think we might be able to be a conduit for doing things. So just wanted your thoughts on that, as I've developed it's kind of this idea of how different levels that congregations might choose to get involved. If they don't want to, if they're not comfortable or don't have enough members to take on a person or family, or be more hands-on, maybe they just want to donate food and funds, whatever they can manage, so it's different levels of engagement. So I have that, and I think at one of our previous meetings, maybe last spring, Anne Marie had mentioned, like, let's get the gap analysis so that we can really be informed when we talk to these congregations about where the needs are, where the gaps are. And I respect that, and I think that's fine. We can do that, but we can, in the meantime, as we're waiting for the PIT recommendations and the formal gap analysis, that we can start to think about what this might look like, if you even want to get involved in something like that. Because if this committee isn't, doesn't have the bandwidth or doesn't want to take this on right now, I completely, respect that, and I can go a different way with stuff. But just wanted your feedback, if you have any.
I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but Nick Carey, our vice chair for HLA,
Yeah.
he is a community organizer, at least in the past, with Faith in Florida, I believe.
Yes,
So
yes,
I
yes,
need,
he is.
okay. I want to make sure you
Yeah.
two are connected. And so if that,
Yes,
okay,
we are. And
okay,
Nick's a friend and he gave me the contact with FAST. So I'm still
good.
just, it's a little bit struggling. You know, they have their big Nehemiah thing in early spring, and I don't know how fully active they are throughout. I just don't know yet, but I'm continuing to work on that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing to continue to engage with them, to get this more formalized.
mhm,
And, even share the letter that we sent to, Pinellas County, legislative delegation. Is this something you
mhm,
want to sign on to? Again,
mhm, mhm,
getting the board's approval. Um,
mhm,
but that could be a starting point for this,
mhm, mhm,
as our call to action.
mhm,
But I do think it's important to know what we're doing before
mhm.
we, and who we are
Yes,
before we,
right. Mhm,
start working more collaboratively with them.
mhm,
But to that point, there's no reason why we couldn't send out, again, with board approval, that letter that was sent to the Pinellas County delegation, or more people to forward it to them,
mhm,
especially now, with, as Sherry pointed out, and we all know, legislative session is in a lull. They don't go back until
mhm,
Monday.
mhm,
And then it's going to be, you know, a lot of work, a lot of consensus building, a lot of backdoor deals. And
mhm,
we want to make sure that, the funding for salaries and services makes it into the final budget. So maybe
mhm,
it's a good idea to send this out to FAST and ask them to forward it.
mhm, mhm. Okay. Why don't I do, all right, so let me ask y'all what you think of this. So what if I draft a letter, a cover letter that we could send to FAST, Faith in Florida, and any other, religious organization or something? And it introduces, the CoC and as the advocacy committee, we're writing this to, number one, invite you to join the CoC, and wanted to make you aware of this letter that we sent to our legislators to support the work for, the CoC, and, however we've got it worded. And if I draft that like today and send it to you all for feedback, then we can send it to the executive committee to get an okay, and then send it on to any of those faith-based organizations. What do you think about that?
I would be in support of making that
Okay. Okay.
recommendation. And now is a perfect time to do that,
Okay.
And
I
Kathleen, I
think.
think it's important that you mentioned other faith-based organizations. There are several churches that don't join FAST, but are still
Yes.
very much involved in the homeless community.
Right. And I mean, I can look on my spreadsheet from the tax assessors. I'm pretty sure I don't have an email, but I can go through and kind of look at which ones are bigger or whatever. And maybe, I choose 20 or 30 or 50 of those and send it via email
Yeah.
as well.
And I
Yeah.
would also, say Jewish Federation of,
Yeah.
Tampa Bay, I'm not as familiar with the, Muslim community, but, maybe.
All those different faiths.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yep.
because we definitely are, ecumenical in the broadest sense.
Yep. All right. I'll include, um, I'll try to include a list of who the first email batch will go to so that y'all are aware of that. Okay. Um, Mhm. Okay. All right. Any feedback on that from anybody else here?
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
I like
Kimberly.
the idea. Hi. I like the idea of reaching out to them, sending them a letter, but I think if your ultimate goal is that, or if you think that they don't know much about the COC and you're wanting them to be ultimately join the COC or take on a specific project, you know, whether it's helping an individual family or whatever, if that's the ultimate goal of reaching out to these faith-based communities or churches, I think the letter, the introductory letter to them should be more along the lines of the other letter that just provides information about what the
Just a heads
COC
up.
does
Yes.
and the lead agency's role in the, you know, the more statistic type letter as opposed to the letter that is for the legislative delegation. Because I think ultimately, you know, that may be a second letter, but as an introduction to who we are and what we do, I think, you know, a letter that just describes that in a more, um, you know, personable,
Well,
user-friendly.
but I think we've got to have action right now. So I would say that, you know, the intro email would be, you know, pretty brief about the COC, but we're writing it, you know, to you at this moment because it's critical that we support the funding for, you know, those most vulnerable in our community, and wanted to share this letter with you at this time. I invite you to learn more about us here at the website, and I'll be reaching out at a further date to blah, 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 you know.
Uh, but are you
Just
asking them to contact a local legislator or, I mean,
Yes, I think that's ultimately it. It's please do, you know, share this letter or help support us in contacting our legislators with these concerns, you know, or this ask.
I mean, Kimberly, in principle, I completely agree with you, right? So before you ask anybody to do something, you want to establish a relationship with them, right? That's like advocacy
Yeah.
101. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, but we're at a critical juncture here. And I think, and Kathleen has wanted to reach out to the faith-based community for some time. We were just trying to craft either a document or something that when we met with them that you know had a goal and purpose. So we haven't gotten that far. But I think now is critical that we have support of everybody to ensure that this funding gets through this legislative session. So I mean, we could do what you're suggesting, which is ideal.
Mhm.
But it would have to be literally one after the other.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe
And
maybe the HLA already has a relationship with these faith-based organizations that we can piggyback on.
We do, the COC does. Yeah, we do have some, Sam Picard is a chair
Right.
seat, and he represents faith-based, but we also have Allendale. We do have lots of connections.
Right. So they
leaders.
already know us to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right.
the cold night shelter churches, all
shelter.
that. They're
Yeah.
all members.
So
Yeah.
we're already like halfway there,
Mhm.
I think.
okay.
But we haven't formalized that. So, but
And it is a goal. It is a goal. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is definitely a goal, Kimberly. You're absolutely right.
But I also want to add to or to just come back to what Kimberly was saying as well. She was recommending the other letter, and I know that the DCF, the one that went out earlier to the delegation, it's one thing for us to not receive to have like funding that is delayed versus what's happening right now, which is, will the CoC program exist? And that's the dear colleague letter that was intended to share with, that FCEH came up with. So that would be worthy of discussion too. Just determining which should be prioritized. And It's both. I get that. But something to consider, because there's the ask would be in the body of the reach out, of course, and that's the support. But
There was another hand, I think from, and my view, I'm gonna, there's someone else who has a question. Please ask it, or had your hand up.
I didn't want
There you
to,
go.
I wanted to ask a question, but it was already answered with the back and forth that you guys were going on with. So
Okay. Okay. No other advice, or you're all good?
well, I mean, I just wanted to piggyback off of what Kimberly was saying. I didn't know if there was like this initial um where you guys already had a relationship, because it seemed like it was just a letters from my understanding, but you guys cleared that up. It was just this initial letter going out to the faith-based churches. Um, and it just seemed like there was not really a collaboration yet. So, but you guys are saying that there is a collaboration and some, so yeah, that answered my question.
And we can send it, we can narrow that down and just do it to the ones we do have a relationship with for right now, if that's the consensus. There are, I don't know, at least, I think we have at least 10 to 15 with different churches that host our cold night shelters, or help with those kinds of our meetings, all sorts of things that churches have helped with. So we can start with them for sure.
And these are when you talk about faith-based organizations, you're talking about local churches in the area, correct? Okay.
Yeah. But there's also like the Jewish Family Services and other organizations like that.
Yeah. Which I'm not too familiar with. But yeah, so I was just trying to understand the difference of what you guys were talking about. But yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for asking, participating. Okay, I'll get on that stuff and then run it by you. So just to be clear, I'll draft an introductory email of the, as a reminder. So these will be ones that are familiar with the CoC. As the CoC, we blah 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 blah, and then we're concerned with funding, and this is at the state level. This letter is for the state level, Sherry, right? And with our legislators back in session and the budget due required to be passed by the end of June, we're concerned about funding for us, and wanted to share that this is the letter we sent to our legislators. And if we'd appreciate any engagement you can do with our legislators to support this critical funding in our community, something like that. And so I'll run it by you all for any kind of feedback or approval, and then we'll send it on to the executive committee, and hopefully there'll be a quick yes, and then we can get it out into the mail early next week. Does that seem doable, Sherry?
yes, and we'll get the list of our partners that exist.
Okay.
We have good contacts.
And I'll look through that list from the tax person and anybody else that jumps out. But I don't. Sherry's probably got a better hold on some of the religious communities that help down in the St. Pete area, and I know the ones up here north. But yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'll keep everyone updated on my meeting with FAST or Faith in Florida and if you have anything to add or share about engaging other faith-based community members, let me know. And again, we're kind of waiting for the recommendations from the PIT and the document that's called the gap analysis in late summer, early fall. And then we'll, as Anne Marie has said, who are we? What is our ask? Where are those gaps? How can we show them? And, you know, and again, what is the ask? What is the, and I would say rather than ask, what's the opportunity for you to join us and engage? What level are you comfortable with? And who's already doing things? And, you know, do you want to kind of, you know, model it after something that's already being done by other faith leaders in our community? Or do you have an idea of your own? Or do you want to just wade in with, you know, just some volunteer support or financial support or, you know, food support, whatever. All right. The rest, we have any open forum or discussion, any concerns or ideas or suggestions from anyone here on our meeting? I'm just seeing 3. So, hey, Megan, can you take that agenda away?
Oh, yes.
Thanks. Oh, Gary, I see your hand up. What you got, Gary?
If everyone will forgive me, duty calls when my LEAC members has a problem. I have to leave the meeting, go tend to my member. So if everyone will forgive me, duty calls.
All
Have
good.
a good day,
We're all
everybody.
done.
So, my
We're pretty
apologies.
close to done. Thank you, Gary. Thanks for being
All
here.
right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Okay. All good? All righty. Okay. Well, again, I appreciate all that you've done. Keep your Gary, that's just Gary's hand that's still up. Yeah, check your email for that draft letter. If it doesn't come today, it'll come tomorrow, and we'll continue to move forward. And I hope that you all here are fully engaged when we have our board of directors meeting and review the PIT report, point in time count, what it shows, and how we're, you know, going to move forward with all that. And at our next board of directors meeting, we'll definitely have the budget from the state and know what we're dealing with there as well. So anything else? All good, Anne Marie?
Yeah, great. Thank
Okay.
you for asking.
All right. Thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and weekend. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thanks, Jennifer. You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.